Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me today in the Locher Room. I'm Alan Locher. Every October, schools and organizations across the country join STOMP Out Bullying, the leading national nonprofit organization dedicated to changing the culture for all students in observing National Bullying Prevention Month. Their goal is to encourage schools, communities, and organizations to work together to stop bullying and cyberbullying and put an end to hatred and racism by increasing awareness of the prevalence and impact of all forms of bullying on all children of all ages. Ross Ellis is the founder and chief executive officer of STOMP Out Bullying. She is nationally recognized as an expert for her work in bullying and cyberbullying prevention, violence against children, online safety, as well as being an expert in parenting. She founded STOMP Out Bullying in 2005. As someone who was bullied myself when I was younger, I'm really excited to bring this conversation to you today and learning what we can all do to support STOMP Out Bullying's mission. Please welcome to the Locher Room, Ross Ellis.
Hi, Ellen.
Hey there. How are you?
I'm good.
Thanks for being here.
Happy to.
So, talk about, sort of your background. How did you get into this? I know the organization started in 2005.
Totally by mistake. I had started another charity for child abuse prevention. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Called Love Our Children USA. And we started getting all these emails and phone calls about bullying. And of course, we all knew what bullying was, but cyberbullying didn't have a name. So I started doing research and talking to experts. And before I knew it, I had put information on the Love Our Children website and it crashed in 2 days. And I knew we had some,
Wow.
yeah. So we fixed it, we put it on the computer. And it was amazing the number of people that came to us wanting information. And STOMP Out Bullying was born in 2005, and now we're 15 years old.
I mean, that's crazy, 15 years.
The best is we can help so many kids.
So what were some of the first things you tackled back in 2005?
Well, as I said, bullying was around, but I had to really tackle what was happening today because I wasn't really aware of what was happening today. So I had a lot of studying to do and talking to people, and then the cyberbullying. So I really became a lot of a cyber expert in learning that. And it's just amazing the things that kids do online and in person.
You just made me think, what is the biggest misconception about maybe bullying and cyberbullying?
Bullying, no matter, I just go crazy because everyone who hears someone who's on TV or just walking around and they're saying something, it's not always bullying. There's a lot of bullying going on right now, and it's not all bullying. Most of it is not. Cyberbullying, a girl came to us, she was 13, and this boy was flirting with her, and she knew him. And we said, well, did he say anything bad or threatening? No. And we said, well, this is great. He likes you. I mean, I thought it was wonderful.
That's so funny. Were you bullied?
I was. I did not have any friends from being very little until I went to junior high. I went to junior high. I don't know what happened. I was Miss Popularity. And I didn't do anything different.
But I'm sure when we were younger, we really didn't understand because there wasn't a conversation like we're having today about bullying.
Right. Yeah, it was just mean kids. And I would go home every day and I wouldn't say anything to my parents. It was very lonely. And I was not looking forward to going to junior high at all. And I walked in and how did I become so popular?
Well, that's what you hope for all kids, right?
Right.
I wanted to share some of these statistics. 1 out of 5 kids is bullied. Depending on the age group, up to 34% of students say they have been digitally harassed.
Right.
9 out of 10 LGBTQ students experience harassment at school. I was one of them. Some kids are so tormented that suicide has become an alternative for them. And about 5.4 million students miss at least one day of class per month for fear of bullies. Can you elaborate on some of those?
Well, the kid, look, any kid that's being bullied, they know when they go back to school on Monday, it's going to happen all over again. Usually it's in the bathroom at school or somewhere like the schoolyard or somewhere where there aren't teachers around. And the kids really don't know how to handle it. So they're just terrified to go back to school, and they'll come up with headaches, stomach aches, anything that their mother will allow them to stay home. The cyberbullying is so out of control because these kids all have digital devices, and anyone can say anything. This new thing started a couple of years ago. A kid will go online and say, "Go kill yourself." Now, you and I know if someone said that to us, we laugh. We would think they were crazy. But kids don't. Kids take it very seriously.
Right. There was an incident of that, right, in the media where somebody followed through on that and they sued the child, right, or something like that. I feel like.
Yeah. In Florida.
And the age group that the children that Stomp Out Bullying helps is 13 to
24, because it
24
does college.
And do you hear from a lot of parents asking you for advice on how to handle that as well?
And we do. And we have an area where they can go and read up on specifically what their issue is. If it's something really serious, I'm very hands-on. So I'll get involved and at least try to help or give them resources.
Okay. Yeah, people can go to the website that I just put up right there. You're very welcome. Yeah, I mean, it's really infuriating to see what it does do to, especially at 13. I mean, it can really send, a kid down a horrible path.
Oh, it's awful.
What advice would you give to, a kid who is being cyberbullied? And then on the same thing, what would you say to the parents?
Right. First of all, parents need to communicate with their kids, and not just one time. They have to have conversations all the time about if this happens, and they also, it's so important, must create responsible digital citizens, because you can't just hand your kid a phone and say, here. You have to know how to handle it. So that's what parents can do. Kids, the minute they see a negative post about themselves, they should immediately not respond to the person, block them, and delete the post. Kids find it very hard to do that because they check their social media posts probably a minimum 100 times a day. I know you and I can think of better things to do. They're checking their social media, and it's so.
I think adults, sadly, we do it as well. And I'm blanking on the full name, but the Netflix movie that's out right now, The Social, and I can't think of what the full name is, but that deals with the, like you said, to tell a kid to delete or to block someone. They in some ways they still want attention, but they don't want to be bullied.
Right. But the thing is, if they don't follow those things, then they're going to keep on getting the bullying. So, they need to understand, number one, there are trolls all over the internet. Number two, that your best friend could actually be bullying you. Or a boy you like, or a girl you like, whatever. So it's really important that if you see that, what's more important? Is it more important to see what they're saying or to block them out and delete them? I mean, if they don't, it's like pouring water on gasoline. It's critical that they do that. They're not happy about it, but they must do it.
What's the hardest message you think you have to convey to kids? Is it that, or is there?
It's that, but you know what? I mean, I always say that, and I always say, how do you know that that's really a friend? I mean, we had a couple of instances where parents called us, the kids called us. One girl emailed us for months that her friend's father was sexually abusing her. It was a lie. She made it up. She had her friend's password, and everything was, oh, this is happening. I had to call the police. We had to send them to the kid's school. The mother came home from work. She was like, what's going on? I felt terrible, but it was my duty to do that. And it turns out her friend made up everything.
Hmm. When do you, because like you just said, you called the authorities. Is there a moment where you will tell, a kid you're dealing with or the parents to bring in the school authorities or the police or?
Yes, I do. Police don't really take it too seriously, depending on what it is. If it's a threat, they probably will. But if it's just the bullying or cyberbullying, they hear this every day. They don't have the time for this when everything else is going on. But I always tell the parents, like, keep everything documented. It's really important, um, especially when they say, go kill yourself. Because if a kid, and think about this, if they hear it often enough, it's going to just drum in their head and they could possibly do that. That's the last thing we want them to do.
Hmm.
As I said to you before, if someone said that to us, we would just look at them like they were crazy.
Right.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
like, you're telling me to go kill myself. So kids are very vulnerable. They hear something and they attach to it right away. They don't really, their brains are not mature enough to let it go. And it's really sad that they can't. That's why a lot of the social media sites want you to be 13 to even come on. And they're not. Some are 6 and 7 and 8, and that's way too young.
Well, especially if they don't have parents who are looking out or monitoring their
Exactly.
social media use for sure.
Right.
We talked earlier that it's been 15 years since you started. What are some of the more positive changes you've seen over the years?
Luckily, there's a slight decrease in bullying and cyberbullying. Not much, but slight. So that's good. We have been able to actually, from our help, we have a help chat line that's run.
Mm-hmm.
It's run by volunteers.
I just put that up as well.
Thank you. It's run by volunteers who have either a psychology background or social work background. And many times there will be a kid who says, I want to kill myself. You have to take that for everything they're saying, even if it's not true. So we involve law enforcement. They get involved. And the kids get help. I had just come home from seeing Hamilton, and there was an email from a little 12-year-old in Massachusetts. She wanted to kill herself. And luckily, her address was there. So it was so easy for me to call the police. I called the police. I called her parents. The next day on Facebook, I got a message from her sister saying, thank you so much. I love my little sister, and I couldn't imagine my life without her. And then it was so great because the kids started saying, can I email you? And we said, of course, and that was a great moment. All in all, we've saved about a little over 6,000 lives.
That's incredible.
Yes.
And you also have kids ages 13 to 18 as youth ambassadors,
Yes.
which I think is so great. Can you talk about the Youth Ambassador program?
And they're really wonderful. They're very committed, and they go to schools and they talk about the issue. And it's always great, a kid hearing from another kid. What's also great is that besides going to different schools, a few, like one was on the Today Show, one went to Congress to speak to the Black Congressional Caucus, and they've been all over, and it's so exciting that people are listening.
Are some of the volunteers in the ambassador program kids who've been bullied themselves? Do you find that you get some of those?
Not mostly, because unfortunately, the kids that have been bullied, they're still wearing it on their sleeve. And I'm trying to get them to not do that because it doesn't serve them well. The more you harp on what happened to you whenever, it doesn't go away. That bad feeling is still there. So we're trying to get them to see counselors so they can get rid of it. And then they're welcome if they qualified to be youth leaders.
And Stomp Out Bullying has some global ambassadors as well. What is their involvement?
They're pretty much celebrities, and they go on talk shows. They go, they speak to the press. They do PSAs. It's been a good relationship with them.
Well, that's awesome. Well, speaking of two of them, former New York Jets legend Tony Richardson has worked with your organization for a number of years, and I know that my friend, Emmy and Grammy Award-winning actor Michael Park has as well. So let's bring them out and talk to them as well.
Great.
Tony and Michael.
Hello, how you doing?
How are you? Good. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for joining. Hey, Russ, what does it mean to have someone like Tony, someone like Michael involved, and how do the kids respond to them as well?
Oh, kids love them. When they hear them speak, they're really excited. It's great because I'm not a celebrity, but when you have two celebrities.
Yes, you are, Ross.
Oh,
rock star.
I don't.
She's definitely a rock star.
But when they, the kids hear them, it's not their parents. It's not me. It's someone who is a celebrity who knows, what's happening, and they're mesmerized and they do listen. I'm Evan Hansen. The line was around two corners. You couldn't even get in.
No, well, I mean, that's subject matter. Michael and Tony, yourselves as young men, young boys, were you bullied? Tony, if you want to take it first.
First of all, well, it's so great to see Ross. Ross, you're a rock star, and I'm so happy to see you. And this is my first polo shirt, so we kind of coordinated. It's obviously blue.
We did for the blue.
we
Tony and I wore blue today.
I gave myself a facial and took a shower today, so I did this all for you. But yeah, a little bit of my story. My dad was in the military, so as a kid, we moved a lot. And so think about, every time, Ross and I, we speak together quite a bit. And so when your dad gets orders, unfortunately, you don't get a chance to move at the beginning of the school year. You have to move when it's time to move. And so I was a kid that pretty much, I was born in Germany, lived there for 2 years, Texas for 3, back to Germany, Kentucky for 3. So a kid was always moving around. And I was a kid that, was a little different. I never knew I was going to be 6'2" and be 240 pounds and play in the National Football League. So I was a kid that was kind of smaller in stature. Used to get picked on quite a bit. My hygiene wasn't the best. I was the youngest of 7. And I got, obviously you get picked on at home, and that's one thing. But when I got to school, my hygiene wasn't always good. I was a bedwetter. Being a youngster of 7, sometimes you have to wear clothes that are a little bit tighter. It means they were hand-me-downs. You had to wear shoes that someone else wore before. So I always remember, as a kid, you stand up in front of the class and you say, "Hey, my name is Tony Richardson. I moved here from such and such. My dad is such and such." And you just hear all the sniggling and the laughing and the finger pointing and all those things. And so obviously, when I speak with Ross and we talk about, different points, and I know Ross mentioned this a little earlier, I wish I would have had someone that said, "Hey, you know what? You're a new kid in school. Hey, here's where the lunchroom is located. Here's where the gym is located," all those different things. Or, "Hey, do you want to sit with us? Hey, do you want to be our friend?" Versus getting, picked on, and to the point to where you start building self-issue. I mean, you start building low self-esteem, and you don't want to go to school the next day. It affects your grades. And I think that's where my hygiene problem came from, because I just wanted to, and I was a kid who had bad allergies. I had bad migraines and I had a heart murmur. So I couldn't go outside and play. So you're talking about a kid that had a lot of issues growing up. And so all of a sudden you'd come home and just go to bed. And then I just wanted to sleep it away and then maybe deal with it again the next day. And so, so I definitely got bullied as a child.
Well, it's great that you speak about it, because there are so many kids who are military kids who move around a lot, and to share that. Michael, yourself, were you bullied as a kid?
Yes, of course. And I say of course because in my mind now, looking back and hearing the stories that I've heard over the years, it feels like everyone has been bullied as a kid. And it does start, Tony, you're right. It does start at home. It's weird how we kind of take that role on as the second born or the youngest, like you're talking about. And then we carry that over. Now, of course, I had an army of cousins on my side, but I was also involved in the arts and singing and theater. So, it didn't help that it was around this time, Halloween, and the park down the street was having a costume contest, and I dressed as the Wicked Witch of the West, and my mother taught me the song "I Feel Pretty." So I go in there, and I'm singing "I Feel Pretty" as the Wicked Witch of the West. I was asking for it, but at the same time, I kind of loved the attention, and I was good at it. And then, in middle school, I was singing at a talent show, and a song in my range was "Tomorrow." I didn't know that it came from Annie at the time. I didn't know it was a girl's song, but of course, everyone in my class did. All they did was kind of make fun of me for that. And that stigma stayed on for years. And I wasn't going to back down, though. For some reason, I was going to be in the chorus. I was going to be in the band. I was going to be on stage. And it worked out for the best. But I can see so many people needing theater and needing the outlet. As and I hate this term of misfits, where all the misfits kind of gather, because I think that's a pejorative term. But at the same time, I embrace that term, because then you find your own, and you find a voice, and these people are hearing you and they're listening to you, and you realize that you're not alone in this awkward moment of life that is, Ross, you were talking about it before, 13, 14, 15 years old. Middle school sucks. It is a terrible, terrible breeding ground for just the most diabolical people to, I guess, for their voices to be heard and kind of take over. And Tony, unlike you, I couldn't sleep at night. So you'd get up the next morning feeling awful, because you're worried about all the things that happened the night before. Exactly. And you kind of compile all of these bad feelings, and they start snowballing, and some people can't get out of that pit. Thankfully, like I said, I had a family to help me out of that pit. But
interesting too, though, because like Tony was saying, bad skin, acne, I had braces, people, anything triggers young people to respond, in such a way that, it's sometimes hard to deal with that kind of, and it's so interesting too. It is always the arts too. A lot of times it is the arts, people who are in theater, get that, the bullying. Tony, did the New York Jets introduce you to Stomp Out Bullying, or did you introduce?
The New York Jets introduced me to the lovely Ross. And, the thing about it is we have a great team with Jesse Linder and Eli Hodges. And so when they mentioned, Stomp Out Bullying and Ross, and the first time I met her, it's been a great relationship. And you just see her heart, and you see her passion for these young people. And I tell my story quite a bit, because the only reason, because I never played sports, because, the thing about it, growing up in Germany, like, we had American football, but never really played. I like baseball, but I didn't get into sports until I finally moved to Alabama. And the only reason I went out to try sports is because, quote unquote, those were the cool kids. And then I was tired of it. It was like a kid that, did pretty well in school, but then the social aspect wasn't really there. And so, okay, now I get a chance to move to Alabama and I get to start all over. Because that's one thing about being in the military with your dad. You can be whoever you want. I could be a rock star. I can make up whatever I want. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go out here and try for sports. And that's where the, I guess, quote unquote, cool kids were, and never, really touched the football as far as, throwing it around in the backyard with my brothers and sisters. But that's really the only way I went out for sports, because I was tired of it and got tired of, getting picked on. But so the New York Jets introduced me to Ross, and you asked me earlier, I think by now, Ross, we probably would have been to at least probably 5 schools, at least 5, if not more. Easy. And we see it. And I see a lot of my friends, who live in my neighborhood, and they tell me the horror stories about, kids getting picked on. And thank God for, our generation. We didn't have social media. Like,
oh, I know.
I couldn't imagine if someone took a picture of me when I was 8, 9 years old and posted it on the internet. I would have never went to school. Like, I just can't even imagine. So it's a serious issue, and it's something that I don't take lightly, because unfortunately, and we know the statistics, like young people are taking their lives. Young people don't want to go to school. And that social media animal is that's taken on, and that's, I think, that's not only in kids, just adults as well. Like, poor self-image of who you're supposed to look like. It's like, no, you don't have to try to be that supermodel or that guy on TV that has like 18 cars and lives in an 18,000 square foot home, which is probably not reality anyway. But that's what people try to measure themselves up to.
Well, and you said it is an animal, social media animal. And speaking about that, Michael, you were part of the amazing Tony Award winning Dear Evan Hansen, where you played Larry Murphy. And the show's message of "You will be found" is so profound for all of those youths who don't fit in. Can you talk about that experience? And kind of like from before taking on Larry Murphy, and then sort of like leaving Larry Murphy, because I know like the experience was profound even for you, not just the audience, but it was profound, I think, for you.
Well, definitely. Beforehand, I have 3 kids, and so beforehand, and all of them kind of attempted to and or are still seeing cognitive therapists, because it's just a great way to learn how to communicate your feelings and your present feelings, not your past feelings. So, I mean, I'm just, and to deal with the pressures and the social pressures that Tony was talking about, not knowing how to deal with them when we were kids, because we didn't have that access. And a lot of kids don't have that access. But if you do, seriously consider helping your kid out a lot by introducing them to a cognitive therapist.
Actually, can you explain it a little more what it is? So
cognitive therapy?
Yeah.
Well, no, it's focused on present thinking instead of past thinking, and it's present behavior and how to deal with certain situations and pressures and help communicate. It teaches you how to communicate to other people. And so you're finding someone, it's easier to block someone. We were talking about it earlier, Ross. If you have those abilities, if you have that knowledge, it's like, I don't need this in my life. This is not helping me. Boom, gone. And it does help when you introduce them to someone at a younger age, because it helps deal with depression and anxiety and panic and fear and personality problems, substance abuse. I mean, it helps with all of these things. So I really can't stress how important finding someone to talk to, especially when your kid is having these problems right now, and realize that, number one, they are not alone. And number two, that this will pass.
That's right. And they don't see that.
They don't see that. They can't, because they're just experiencing it for the first time. I mean, imagine. I mean, come on, your emotions and your hormones are going insane. Yeah. So, and you're just dealing with this for the first time. So you have no idea how to deal with it. So this person, someone other than your parents, someone other than your aunts and uncles, friends, someone other than your friends. Don't turn to your friends for problem solving, please. Yeah. It just helps. It just makes things worse. But if you can find a cognitive therapist to help you out with that, then you're gonna thrive. I guarantee it. I've seen it happen.
Yeah, I actually echo that. Working for the National Football League, we have resources available, and, I see a therapist now, and it's just things that maybe you didn't address when you were, think about it. I'm in my 40s, and still some of the things, because everyone thinks like, oh, you live this glamorous lifestyle, you're out all the time, you're like so Mr. Popular, but technically I'm really a recluse. Like there's nothing better for me just to be at home, and I have a dog, and it's me and Rambo. And
like a dog.
Yeah, I do. I have a like a dog who gets bullied a little bit. You know what? A great day for me is being at home. And people think like, oh man, you live in New York City, you want to be in here, you want to be here. No, I want to be home. And I think that's a lot of just, things. I mean, fortunately enough, I had a little bit of success in the National Football League, and playing for the Jets and playing on the national stage. But for me, I really don't want to be in the crowd. I don't want to, I have a lot of friends, but I also pull back quite a bit, and I spend a lot of time by myself. And
it's tough being a Jet these days too, Tony. Let's be honest.
That's another reason why I wasn't going to bring that up, but
I was waiting for something like that from Michael.
Well, as a Bills fan, I can't let it go.
Yeah, I threw that up. That was a slam dunk.
I love your dog's name, Rambo. That's a great name.
Yeah, I'm surprised he hadn't come out yet, because he's so since the pandemic, I've become a great dog walker. I'm a chef. I'm a homemaker now. So, but yeah, I rescued a dog from Egypt. His name is Rambo, and it was a friend of mine was telling me about there was these 4 dogs, and all of them had different issues. One had bullet fragments in his face. One was severely abused. One was abandoned, and one was hit by a car. And I'm thinking like, man, I live in Long Island City. I'm like, do I think I could take on a dog that has, pretty, some major issues? And the first time I met him, he's 3 legs. I got him. He was about 6 months. We run in the mornings. Like, but it's interesting when you start thinking about that as well. Like, I've had people say different things like, oh, or if I'm walking down the street, I'm walking my dog, they'll pull their dog to the other side of the street. And I'm like, man, if your dog hangs out with my dog, your dog's leg is not going to fall off. It's like, it's not going to happen. I mean, it's scientifically not possible, but it's interesting how people, when you're different. And that's what I think what we're talking about here. People don't understand how to recognize people who are different and include people who are different. Because I think being a different kid, and the fact of growing up in Germany, we didn't even think about that. When you moved me to the States, here I am, a kid with an afro, listening to AC/DC with holes in his jeans and speaking German. They're like, you're not yeah.
Tony, you sound like the coolest kid I could have met.
and I was and they're looking at me like something's not right about this kid. And so, so it's interesting, like where I would have wanted some kid to come up to me and say, hey man, you know what? You're different, but I like that. And, let's hang out. And that would have,
yeah, but you know what? Don't you find, Tony, though, because you were that kid, you kind of seek other people that are kind of standing alone and a little bit different, and then you kind of welcome them into the fray a little bit. I mean, I find myself being more inclusionary than ever. I mean, given our political climate right now, I mean, we need all that, and we need more inclusion than ever right now.
We need to bring people together.
Absolutely, we do.
Michael, the show, talk about the impact of, you're a performer doing this Broadway show, but the impact from the young people who saw the play, listened to the music. What did you learn from those kids who, were waiting?
I mean, I heard so many stories. I had so many stories, Alan. And not only that, I got letters from parents saying, thank you so much for introducing the show to my son or daughter, because they, again, we all feel because of this situation we're in when we're in middle school or just starting high school. Freshman year is probably one of the hardest years because you're always starting a new school and you're 14 years old. Again, it's just one of these things that it spoke to so many kids on a molecular level. I mean, it really did. And they just grabbed onto it. Now, of course, the conversation has changed. I mean, anxiety and social anxiety and other disorders like that have kind of like taken a back seat to what we're dealing with in the last, 7-8 months, because, we've been forced to kind of ground ourselves in our family again and find ourselves. And I think this, in a way, and I don't want to speak out of school here, this, in a way, I saw my daughter change. It went from being really high anxiety to I'm grounded, finding the ground again. And so at that time with that show, it was needed, it was necessary. And so many people came out of the woodwork and our fans really thrived because of it.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet you saved so many kids. My God.
And you know what? Stacey Mindich, our lead producer, was so smart in teaming with organizations like the Child Mind Institute and the Jed Foundation and Trevor Project and Born This Way and all of these things. So we had all these outlets to introduce to people. So we definitely had talking points to go by. I was not in the character that had to do most of that. A lot of the teenagers, the teenagers in the show.
Right, but you played a parent and you are a parent.
Yeah, but listen, it taught me a lot about myself as a parent. And
yeah, but his role was.
I grew so much, and I learned so much about my kids because of that show. And it just, on top of and Michael Greif making us better actors, all of us, this show and the content of the show just spoke to me in so many ways as a parent that I couldn't help but change some of the things I was doing to make my kids' lives easier.
Are there any that you could, describe some of the things that you changed that you learned?
Well, it's we were talking about social media and cyberbullying and stuff like that, and the texts and the IMs and the DMs and the chat rooms and the email and the online gaming and stuff like that. And so it happens everywhere. And so to monitor what they were doing just made much more sense to us. And so we did that. And, for parents to monitor their kids' online activities, listen, guys, parents, it's your job. It's your job to know their IDs and to know their passwords and to establish rules and to get in there and really pay attention. And you might say you're infringing upon their privacy. What?
Yeah.
No.
You're paying for that phone.
Yeah, but it's not that. It's easy for me to say to the parent that this situation worked for me, Alan, and it's easy for me to say it because it kind of worked. But you've got to stay on top of things, and you've got to communicate. I mean, the communication was probably the most important part of this lesson I had via Dear Evan Hansen, and how not to communicate, but also monitoring their online activity was paramount, and it was an uncomfortable conversation to have.
That was a question I was going to have for you because, like you said, there's so many. Like I can't even keep up. There's TikTok. There's
you got to stay updated on all these apps.
Like, how do you, as a parent? This is just a question for me as a parent. Like, how do you monitor all that? Because it's Instagram, it's Facebook, it's Twitter, it's everything. Like
Well, that's interesting. You're asking because, like, let's say Michael has, their password for Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and then boom, TikTok, Snapchat, and all those come out.
Video games. And
Video games. Right. No, you just got to, the video games are harder. And thankfully only my son, who's now 22, plays video games. And that's morphed into Dungeons and Dragons. That's another story.
Yeah.
But at the time that wasn't, social media wasn't prevalent at that time, especially for those kids. And my girls don't game. So it's a little easier there. So I can't speak on that, Tony. I'd love to. But as far as keeping updated on the apps, you've got to have your finger on the pulse as far as social media. And thankfully Twitter is not that prevalent with 13-year-olds or 14-year-olds. It's just, and that's a political wasteland now. Twitter. Instagram is easier, but you have to also insist that, you follow them.
Yeah.
You got to stay following them, but you have to stay updated with the apps. It's going to change all the time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And more so than that, my mother, their grandmother follows them. So, I mean, they're on their best behavior.
But you do, because I forget what the term is, but there are kids who actually use fake. They have an account for their parents and so parents, you need to know everything. You need to look at the actual app on their phone, because there are kids who have, a different one for their friends, and
that's a whole other conversation. That's again a cognitive therapy conversation, because you're talking about someone who's lying and being deceiving. Mm-hmm. So I can't really speak on that. Has nothing to do with the fact that these kids may be cyberbullied. And you know what? You got to be sure that your kid's not being the bully, because these laws, and they're different in every state, and they can be kind of harsh. So you've got to
It's really tough. And in your role, I mean, your son in the play did suicide.
Correct.
It was unbelievable that if you didn't see it, God willing, it's going to come back. See it.
It's a beautiful, beautiful show. And that brings me to, listen, if you are having problems with your child, or if you're a teenager watching this right now, the suicide hotline is 1-800-273-8255. It's 800-273-TALK. And the crisis hotline, the crisis text line is all you do is text home to 741-741. And all you have to do is text home and start.
Michael, is this the number? Michael,
yes.
Is that the number?
Yes. And 8255 spells talk. So it's 800-273-TALK.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's amazing.
This is 24/7 counseling, guys. So all you have to do is start the conversation if you're having a problem.
Yes,
it's crazy. I wanted to just read, when I was promoting this, I just got a few responses from people. Wanda had said, I was bullied as a kid for a little bit and I had to fight back, literally. And then I actually became the bully. Crazy, isn't it? But I quickly learned, she says, I quickly learned that I was wrong and stopped, and then apologized to those I bullied.
That's great. It takes a person to understand what they're doing that's wrong and how they're hurting people. And you've got to say to yourself, I don't want to hurt people. I always said to myself, what would the Ross I want to be do? And I always got the answer. But there are some kids totally lost.
Now, Tony, you got to kind of take out your aggression on the football field a little bit. You know what I mean? So if you're having a bad day, I mean, God love practice coming up later, because I'm gonna, did you find that to be an amazing outlet for your energy and your anger or your frustration?
I think it was a great question. I think a lot of it was more of the acceptance, and that's one thing I think that the beauty of sports, what it allows you to do. Especially because when we moved to Alabama, I mean, you're talking about, you're dropping a kid that grew up in Germany in Alabama. So you already know what that looks like.
A little different.
Just a tad bit different. But the thing about it, and that's what I love about, because I have a lot of friends that are in the LGBTQ community, just teammates from all different walks of life around the world. When we get in that football field and we grab hands, no one cares. Right. You know what I mean? So that's a beauty of, I think, of inclusion in sports. So I don't necessarily think I took my aggression out, but more so it was a safe haven, because all of a sudden it's like, okay, if you're dealing with stuff, in the hallways and locker rooms and all that kind of stuff, as soon as I got on the football field, it was like, you know what, we were about one cause, and that was winning the football game, and we all got along. And it was, there was the razzing, I dealt with it when I first came into the National Football League, the kind of hazing and all that kind of thing. And then coaches, they got rid of that. Like, there's no more hazing. There's no more, now it's all monetary. Oh, okay, you got to go take all the running backs out to dinner. Then you got a $10,000 bill. But
how did you deal with that? How did you deal with that bullying on the field? I mean, because obviously in practice in high school or something like that, there had to be a moment where somebody was being bullied. And how would you as a player watching this happen, or being the person bullied, how would you deal with being bullied, and who'd you talk to? Who'd you turn to?
Yeah, in the National Football League, or even on the college level, you generally only have like one or two incidents. And I remember when I went to undergrad at Auburn University, and I remember we had one incident where the upperclassmen took all the younger classmen, they threw us all in the pool. But then, as a kid, you don't really quite understand is that, okay, that's bullying, and that's actually part of hazing. But then once after we went through that experience, then they kind of took us under their wing. So I think you just kind of, in sports, you kind of accept it. And even then, it's not right, because I've seen, on the professional level, like when I got to the Dallas Cowboys, they broke into our room. It was late night. They came in with 2 trash cans. They put all of our stuff in the middle of the floor, dumped all the water on top of all our playbook, everything else, cut our eyebrows off, and shaved our head. So that's bullying. That's bullying. That's 100% bullying. But then it's like, okay, the next day you have to get up, you sing your fight song, and then you don't deal with it again. So now coaches have come along and said, we're not doing that anymore.
But it's not singling out one person. It's singling out the group of rookies.
Yeah. And right? So once that happens, it generally never happens again. I think I probably only experienced it. We had when I was in Kansas City, we had a left tackle, and I can say his name by the name of Trezell Jenkins. And so Trezell was out of Michigan. He was one of the biggest human beings I think that, I've ever seen. But he was a first-round draft choice, but he got picked on quite a bit because he wasn't living up to that first-round status per se. and he was a big guy, but they would say kind of soft. And so I saw him go through it to the point where I thought he wanted to quit football. And then eventually, like, guys would be like, man, that's enough, let it go. And that was one of those players because he was an offensive tackle. And, you know, and the coaches would even be like, nah, that's enough of that. Because it's like, you know what, you can kind of think like, here's the pressure of trying to perform at the highest level and you're not performing. And so the whole world sees it. But then internally, your teammates are doing it as well. And we nipped it in the bud because that's, you know, because I was that kid. You know, I wasn't on the sports level. It was just going to school on every day. And so I saw how it affected him. And the thing about it was like it affected him so negatively. I think he only played like maybe 2 years because then in his mind, he was more so versus going out there thinking about the assignments. He was going out like thinking about, okay, the razzing I'm going to get from my teammates. I can only imagine like what his home life.
It encompasses it encompasses your mind for sure.
Exactly.
But you're basically it's having a negative effect on his life. The bullying. Exactly. Michael, did you experience it later in life? Like as an adult?
No. Listen, the reason I didn't play football after Pee Wee is because I was bullied. There was a play called Fumble on Park on 2. And so, you know, they fumble the ball at my feet. I jump on it. And of course, they just dogpile me.
Yeah.
Maybe that was fun. I don't know. It wasn't for me. Did I experience it later in life? No.
I just wonder professionally, you know.
No, there's something that happens, and Tony can speak on this too, and possibly Ross, you even, Alan, that when you reach a certain level of when you're climbing a little bit, you're going to get those people who are trying to like assimilate or kind of find ways to drag you down. But that didn't really happen with me. I got lifted and lifted and lifted, and I found a group of people. And when you get older, kids, if you're listening to this, you're going to find yourself around people who are nothing but supportive. Exactly. And there's nothing that parents can give kids. There's no superpower in the world that's more powerful than support, love and support. Not just unconditional love, unconditional support. And once you have that, it's inexplicable, really, the feeling that you get. So that's what I had from my parents, and that's what I had from my peers and all the directors and everything around you. Because people around you have to realize sooner or later, people around you just want you to succeed. Yep. Like Tony's friend. No one wanted this guy to succeed. And so all he was doing was worried about not succeeding.
Exactly.
And so, you know,
that's a great point because every time if I win an award or obviously if my parents are in the audience, I always said it. I said, as a kid, I got a bike at 15, I got a car at 16. But the thing that my parents gave me the most, and so young people, if you're listening to this or parents, was the support of just knowing that, every football game, my mom's going to be running up and down the field. My dad was going to be in the stands. Every award I got, my parents were there. And so that outrules any monetary thing like new shoes, cars, and all that kind of stuff. Just knowing your parents are there and they love you and they support you. That right there is the only reason I think I was able to be so successful. So much so when you do start to, as you said, start to accelerate in your career, that's all you want to do is to make your parents proud. And I'm to this way today, my parents are listening to this now, and that's the only thing to do.
That's awesome.
My dad always say, son, it's not about the name on the front. It's the name not about the name on the back. But for me, it was the name on the front. So if it was Jets, but I always wanted to make that Richardson name proud. And to this day, that's what I live my life for now is just making my parents proud.
Oh, that's great, Tony.
Well, I came out probably about 21 years old. My mom had asked me. She actually had come out and asked me, and I was petrified to come out, because it was the 80s, and she and my sister gave me unconditional support. My dad sadly didn't know, but to know that now and to understand what she gave me, was incredible. I just had the fear because in 1989, people didn't just, the kids who might be watching today are 13 and they're coming up to their parents and going up to them without being asked and telling them, which I think is beyond.
Right. And listen, there's two groups of people now that are being marginalized more than ever, and that's people of color and, of course, the LGBTQ community. And so you've got to really, that's why I said, kids, guys, reach out to the Trevor Project if you are being bullied or you have any questions or you're having trouble.
About bullying.
Help chat. And it's interesting because you were in the movie Freak Show. You played the principal. Trudy Styler had directed the movie, and it was really eye-opening. It was incredible. Anyone who is coming out or starting to come out, I would suggest they see that movie.
It's a good movie. Yeah, and Bette Midler's in it, so there's that.
And somebody else, Michael, who sent me a note and just sent another one. He said, as someone who was bullied quite a bit, and as a parent of a child who continues to be horribly bullied, this today is so meaningful to him, so he can listen. Tony, you said for like the past 6 or 7 years, and by this time of this year, you would have been to like 6 schools. What is the experience like going into those schools, and what do you hear?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And a lot of times it's, we have fun. So that's one thing we do. And Jesse Linder is great, and obviously Ross is a rock star. But we have fun. So we tell the young people, like, listen up. As I just tell a little bit of my story, tell about where I live, talk about my dog, and then we give them some really good meat as far as things to do, to way to I guess arm them as far as if they see a situation, grab a teacher, grab a loved one, tell someone, all those kind of things. And so it's interesting because it's like, sometimes you get a little sniggling, but then once we start talking about the hard facts and we ask the kids, like, how many kids have been bullied, like almost half the room either raises their hand or knows someone has been bullied. And the reaction is just outstanding. I mean, and the kids, they're just, they absorb it because as they're sitting there, obviously when you're in an assembly, you're cool, you want to lounge back and all that. And all of a sudden they kind of sit up and they're like, they start paying attention and they really understand it. And so much so, like when we start asking them the questions about, how many kids are bullied per day, how many bullied per hour, things they should do, if you see a child, pull them out of the situation, how to be a friend and all those kind of things. It's amazing. It's
they get it because they don't understand how a jet can be bullied or an actor can be bullied.
Exactly.
And so that's why we partner with everyone. It's so critical that they see it and understand it.
Yeah.
I mean, heck, if they're lucky to see it, you know what I mean? Because with cyberbullying, you're not seeing it. It's one of those hidden, silent kind of bullying situations, and unless you grab it and you are monitoring your kids, then you're not gonna see it.
Yeah, every parent, they just have to monitor their children.
It's tough, but yeah, it's easier now that they're home. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, my daughter is loving homeschool. She's loving it. All of that. Listen, what your kid is able to do because they're homeschooled or they're remote learning is so much greater than actually kind of, I'm sorry to say this, being in school, because you have all that anxiety and stress taken out of the equation, and you're just focusing on what's important.
Exactly.
I gotta say, that's been a revelation.
Especially for high school. Especially for high school.
School is over.
And that was my thing. It's like, were my pants too tight? Was my hair not combed? All those kind of things. And so now you don't. It's like, do I have to have the newest shoes on? Do I have to have the best?
No.
No, you don't have.
You don't have to have pants on.
Yeah, that's true. Yep, that's true. Yeah. But that's one of the reason why I really, really enjoy going to the schools because as Ross, as you were saying, is like kids, they see New York Jets and they can't even imagine like, oh man, you were bullied. And I'm like, yeah, believe it or not, I was 4 years old at some point. I was 5 years old, and I wasn't 6'2" and I wasn't 240 pounds. So they have to understand is like, you know what, get yourself out of that situation. Like you said, get help, and you continue to build in your life. And who knows where your life is going to take you? And don't let people talk down to you and telling you you're dumb, you're stupid, you can't make it, because then all of a sudden you start believing that, and the next thing you know, all your dreams and aspirations are out the window because you think, oh, I can never be that guy, or I can never be a famous actor, or all those kind of things. And so that's why I think it's so important. The more we get out and tell young people, like, this is a tough time in your life. It's a lot tougher than when we were in your age, but if you have the right mechanisms now and the right tools to be able to survive that, and not only because there's a lot of kids we run into are very, very confident in who they are. But those are the ones we're like, okay, pull a buddy along. You know what? Grab 2 buddies, grab 3 buddies. And then if you do that and want to be, a buddy to someone else, then we're going to get better as a society.
If you are a bully, if you are a bully, it's not too late to change.
Exactly.
And it's not too late to help somebody else out. What Tony was just saying, grab somebody and help them.
And the more you admit it, no one's going to judge you for it. They're going to help you.
Exactly.
Hey, Michael, with Christopher, Annabelle, and Kathleen, once they saw Dear Evan Hansen, did the conversation from them to you change?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It opened up like you wouldn't believe. And, we found out some things that we might not have found out before. And then we were able to get the help that we needed to get, or we were able to make the changes necessary to change. And that's why, that's why this show is so it's really important. It's really important.
Yeah. The message of that show is.
Yeah. It opens up the conversations. It really does. But
Ross, we had a question. Do you find that bright kids in school attract the bullies? It says, I was bright in school, but never had a problem, but I was also liberal about letting people copy from my test papers.
Well, I mean, you know what? It all depends. It depends on the kid. If you're bright, you can be bullied. If you're not, it depends on the kids, the school, the situation, who are you friendly with, all of that. All of that.
Yeah, I can't even. It's just. I mean, I started just thinking back, like even my childhood, like all the pressures of one just going to school, but now everything that you have to deal with, it's like, And I went to a smaller high school. Once we got to Alabama, my graduating class was about 100, and I go and we speak in some of these schools, and they're like, "Oh, what's the size of the school? Oh, the senior class is 900 kids." I'm like, whoa. And just think about all those pressures of like the smart kids. I'm not saying that there are some kids who aren't smart, but then the gifted ones, then there's the athletes, then there the arts kids, and all these different people that you have to try to fit in with, and you just to get an education. But you have to worry about, oh, is my hair done right? Do I look good? Do I have the right shoes on? It's like, and then obviously we talk about the social media. So
sure.
All the work you guys are doing, we're doing. I think it's we gotta amplify it somehow.
We do. I mean, kids can be bullied for any reason.
Exactly.
You don't need a reason, and that's the sad part. If you're wearing a red sweater and they don't like it, goodbye for that day, or maybe longer. We actually have a program that we started 2 years ago, which actually Tony moderated last year. It's called Culture Shock. It's National Culture Week, and then we get celebrities in a panel. Tony was the moderator, and we talk about what issues did you have being a Black kid, moving around and all of that. What issues does someone have because they're gay or whatever? We actually had a wonderful transgender. Wasn't your year, it was the year before. And really was so informative with the education that people really need to learn. And I'm thrilled that we're doing it again. It's my favorite program, and we'll be doing it, I believe, on April 21st online.
That's great. And talk about National Block It Out Day, which is coming up on November 14th.
Right, that's exciting. We tell everyone, block out all the negativity, but don't just stop there. Pay it forward. Tell your friends, your family, your teacher, whoever. Block it out with me. We reached almost 3 million kids last year.
Wow.
That's amazing.
It is amazing if you can block out the noise, know?
Yeah.
And that's what it is, noise.
Yep.
It is noise. It is. It's distracting to all of us.
Right. So we're really happy about that. And all this month is National Bullying Prevention Awareness Month. I'm not wearing blue, but the first day of October was World Day of Bullying Prevention. And because of all the craziness going on now, we're keeping it the whole month so that kids can really learn about what to do and different things. And our website is just full of information. And we're talking teachers, the principals.
Would you have been out in schools on October 5th?
Absolutely.
If this wasn't happening, you would have been.
Yep.
Yeah.
We definitely would have. And we had planned, probably we would have gone through April, but not going to happen. The Jets are holding, every year they hold a bullying prevention awareness game. Obviously.
Oh, that's great.
Every year, the Jets are amazing. You won't have fans in the audience, but they're still doing it. They're publicizing it. So
they should have a golf tournament. I'm saying that selfishly. I would love to play in that golf tournament.
You're on. You're on. We're going to have a golf.
Do you play golf, Tony?
You know what? I have golf clubs. I know how to get to the golf course.
You guys have a great golf tournament every year, though.
I mean, I know the basis of the game now. Do I know how to play? I mean, I'm okay.
So, first of all, thank you. This has been an amazing conversation. Before I let you all go, what have you learned about yourself, during this time? Did you learn something that you didn't know about yourself?
During this time of COVID?
Yeah, being home and.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I mean, because for me, I like I said, I'm kind of a recluse anyway when possible. Living here in New York, obviously, everyone knows it was pretty serious from March on, and I guess I learned I'm a much better cook because I was a guy who ate out quite a bit, and now I'm doing Blue Apron. I cooked Blue Apron for lunch today. I'm cooking Blue Apron for dinner today. I don't know. I think I think I'm a much better communicator. Obviously, I still see my counselor, therapist. So I think I'm a much better communicator, and it's like I'm trying to be a much better, I guess, family person. Just reaching out to your family and friends because I did a piece for the CDC, and it's amazing during these times how alone people really are, and just about how important it is to really just reach out to someone you hadn't talked to in maybe a couple of weeks or a month or maybe a year, and just dial them up and just say, hey, I really didn't want anything, just want to see how you're doing. So from that standpoint, I think I'm just learning that one, how much we need each other. And, I guess if you give someone a hug nowadays, it's like a weapon. So you can't hug people. You can give them virtual hugs. Yeah, you can give them a fist bump, a virtual hug. But, it's interesting to see how many people are isolated. And so I think I'm learning how to be a much better communicator and just and continue to just try to be a better person through all of this.
Well, I really appreciate all, Michael and Tony saying about the therapist because, so many people are afraid of them. People don't believe in it, but I think it's so important that people just hear it's helpful. It's just a tool to help you.
Yeah, I was one of those people. I was one of those people that carried that negative kind of stigma.
You did.
Therapist, you were weak. That's what that's how you don't need a therapist. Those are for crazy people. No, I'm a crazy person because I need.
Not at all, man. It gives you the tools. It gives you the tools to deal with the weak.
Yeah, exactly.
It does. It really does.
Yep.
Michael and Ross, did you learn anything about yourselves during this time?
Oh, thank you. You sure? I learned how to play the ukulele. Number one. Number two, I'm in a house. I'm in a house with 3 women. I learned how to communicate and shut up when I need to shut up. But also, I was communicating what Tony said. I get, we have to hang out, Tony, because I learned how to communicate with my family too, and so much more than I normally do. I mean, a FaceTime, Zoom calls kind of got a little tiring after a while, like everybody's birthday. Come on, really? I'm sorry, but the game nights on Zoom were so much fun, and using it to have fun, and the whatever the happy hours and stuff like that. That is just it was so much great to communicate and to gather in a different way and not leave the house, Tony. Right? You didn't have to leave the house.
Right up my alley.
Oh, it was great. I loved it. And then binging everything on television with my wife and sitting down with my wife and just spending some time binging British shows.
Yeah.
Give us one show to watch.
Poldark. If you haven't seen Poldark, it's okay. It's good. It's it's all BBC stuff. I just love that BBC stuff. And then Victoria is fantastic on BBC about Queen Victoria. Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. It's really good.
And Ross?
I'm always with people. I'm always talking to people because that's what I have to do. And so I kept up the talking, but I learned how to be alone with myself, and it was okay.
That's good.
It wasn't a bad thing. It was totally okay. And I even got a little more sleep.
Nice. That's great.
And you,
well, Oh God. I don't know. That's good. Nobody's tossed it to me. Actually, the thing I think I learned is I'm very happy at home.
That's great.
I'm very happy at home. I would be very happy to be working from home from now on, which I have been, but doing this, but being home isn't a bad thing,
No, it's not.
Now, quick question: if you want to share this for individuals who couldn't watch this today,
I'll email you the link when we're done. But you guys, thank you so much. Stay here, and I'll sign off, and then we'll say goodbye. Thank you, everybody. Check out the website if you need help. Thank you so much, and